There's a manuscript that describes how they feed, not metaphorically, mechanically, step by step, like a blueprint for extraction. It's not violent, it's not dramatic. It's so subtle you've been living inside it your entire life without noticing. And the moment you see it, the moment you understand the three-step cycle, you can interrupt it. Tonight, right now, before you go to sleep. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is function. And once you know the function, you can break it. The text is from the Nag Hammadi library, specifically the second treatise of the Great Seth, and it says this: they do not take. They cause you to give, and you give willingly, believing it is your own choice. That's the key. The Archons don't steal your energy. They don't force you. They don't overpower you. They design a cycle that makes you hand it over again and again and again while believing you're acting freely. And the cycle has 3 steps. Step 1, the hook. They capture your attention. Step 2, the amplification. They harvest your emotion. Step 3, the loop. They lock you into behavior that feeds the next cycle. Hook, amplify, loop, over and over, every day, every hour, sometimes every few minutes. And here's the worst part. You defend the cycle. You defend it because it feels like you. It feels like your values, your awareness, your responsibility. But it's not. It's the feed. If this story is touching something in you, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let me show you how it works. You wake up, you reach for your phone. That's not a choice. That's training. The system has conditioned you to check, to see what happened while you were asleep, to make sure you didn't miss anything. You open the screen, notifications waiting, messages, news, updates. And in that moment, that first moment of attention, the hook is set. You didn't choose to care about what you're seeing. You didn't decide it mattered, but your attention locked, your focus narrowed, and the cycle began. Now the system amplifies. The headline is designed to trigger you. The image is chosen to provoke. The comment is written to enrage or validate or frighten. And you feel something: anger, fear, desire, outrage, hope. That feeling is the harvest. That's the energy extraction. That's what the system needs from you. And then comes the loop. You react, you comment, you share, you argue, you scroll to the next post, and that action, that reaction, creates the conditions for the next hook. The algorithm notices, it learns, it adjusts, and the next thing it shows you is perfectly calibrated to do it again. Hook, amplify, loop. You think you're browsing, you think you're staying informed, you think you're engaging, but you're feeding. The Gnostic texts call this Kanoma, the hollow realm, a place that looks full but contains nothing. A reality made entirely of reactions to reactions. No center, no source, just endless extraction. And the Archons don't rule it, they maintain it. They keep the hooks sharp, they keep the amplification strong, they keep the loop tight. Not because they hate you, but because a calm human is a useless human. A silent mind doesn't generate energy. A sovereign will doesn't feed the system. So tonight, right now, we're going to interrupt it. Not forever, not perfectly, but once. Because once you interrupt the cycle consciously, once you see it happening and choose to stop, you can never be fully captured again. Step 1, The hook. It starts with attention, not your intention, not your choice, just attention. Something catches your eye, a notification, a headline, a sound, a face, a word, and in that instant, before you've even decided if it matters, your focus locks. That's the hook. The Gnostic texts describe this moment as the snare, not a trap you walk into, but a mechanism that activates the moment you look. The Archons do not chase the soul. They place the bait, and the soul comes willingly. The bait is always the same. It's designed to trigger one of 4 responses. Urgency. Something is happening right now. Something you need to know. Something you can't miss. Novelty. Something new. Something different. Something you haven't seen before. Identity threat. Something that challenges who you are, your beliefs, your tribe, your values. Emotional bait. Something that makes you feel instantly and intensely. Anger, fear, desire, outrage. The system doesn't care which one works. It just needs one of them to land. And the moment it does, the moment your attention shifts from open awareness to focused reaction, the hook is set. You're no longer browsing. You're no longer choosing. You're captured. Here's how it works in real time. You're sitting at your desk, working, thinking, calm. Your phone buzzes. You don't decide to look. You just look. That's the training. That's the conditioning. The system has taught you that the buzz means something important. You unlock the screen, a message, a headline, a post. And before you've read the whole thing, before you've even processed what it says, you feel something. That's the hook. Your attention is no longer yours. It's been redirected. And now the system has you exactly where it needs you, because attention is the currency. Attention is the entry point. Attention is the first step in the feed cycle. The texts warn, guard your gaze, for where your eyes go, your energy follows. Not metaphorically, literally. The moment you give your attention to something, the moment you lock focus, you've opened the channel. You've made yourself available. You've entered the cycle. And now comes the amplification. Step 2, the amplification. You're hooked. Your attention is locked. You're looking at the screen, reading the headline, watching the video, scrolling through the post. And now the system does something precise. It amplifies what you're already feeling, not creates, amplifies. The Archons can't make you feel something that isn't already in you. They can't invent emotions. They can't fabricate reactions. But what they can do, what the entire architecture is designed to do, is take a spark and turn it into a fire. You see something that irritates you, just a little, a flicker of annoyance. The system shows you 3 more things just like it. Now it's not a flicker, it's anger. You see something that worries you, just a whisper of concern. The system floods you with context, with worst-case scenarios, with voices that confirm your fear. Now it's not concern, it's panic. You see something you want, just a passing desire. The system shows you everyone else who has it, shows you how easy it is, shows you the gap between where you are and where you could be. Now it's not desire, it's craving. This is the amplification. And here's the key. You think the intensity is yours. You think you're angry because the situation is outrageous. You think you're afraid because the threat is real. You think you're craving because you genuinely need it. But the emotion isn't proportional to the trigger. It's amplified by the system. The texts describe this as the bellows, a tool that takes a small flame and forces air through it until it becomes an inferno. They do not light the fire, they make the fire consume. And here's why this step is so effective. Strong emotion bypasses discernment. When you're flooded, when you're angry, afraid, desperate, outraged, you don't think clearly, you don't question, you don't pause, you react. And reaction is exactly what the system needs, because reaction is energy, pure, unfiltered, high-intensity energy, and that energy is the harvest. The Gnostic term is pathos, not passion, but suffering through intensity. You're not feeling something meaningful, you're feeling something loud, and the loudness drowns out everything else. Your discernment, your stillness, your capacity to choose, all of it gets buried under the wave. And while you're flooded, while you're riding that emotional surge, the system extracts. It doesn't take your soul, it doesn't steal your will, it takes your attention, your time, your energy. You spend an hour scrolling, an hour arguing, an hour researching, an hour defending your position. And at the end of that hour, what do you have? Nothing. No clarity, no resolution, no peace, just exhaustion. That's the harvest. The texts warn. The Archons feed not on your joy or your sorrow. They feed on your turbulence. A still soul is invisible to them. So the amplification isn't about making you sad or happy. It's about making you intense, making you reactive, making you turbulent. Because turbulence is fuel. And once you're burning, once the fire is roaring, the system locks you into the final step, the loop. Step 3, the loop. You're hooked, you're amplified, you're burning with emotion. And now you act, you comment, you share, you argue, you click, you buy. You scroll to the next post, and that action, that reaction, completes the cycle. Because your action creates a consequence. The algorithm notices, it records, it learns. He engaged with this. He felt something here. He stayed for this long. And now it knows exactly how to hook you again. It knows what triggers you, what amplifies you, what keeps you locked in. And the next thing it shows you, the next hook, is perfectly calibrated to do it all over again. Hook, amplify, loop. This is what the Gnostic texts call hymarmena, fate, but not destiny. Mechanical causation. Action creates reaction. Reaction creates consequence. Consequence creates the next action. And the whole time, you believe you're choosing. But you're not choosing the game. You're only choosing moves within the game. The texts warn. The soul that reacts is the soul that feeds. The soul that acts from turbulence strengthens the chain. Here's how the loop works in real time. You see a post that outrages you. That's the hook. You feel the anger rise. That's the amplification. You comment, you argue, you defend your position. That's the action. And now, what happens? Someone responds, someone disagrees, someone attacks, and that response becomes the next hook. You're pulled back in. The emotion spikes again. You respond again. Hook, amplify, loop. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't resolve. It just continues, feeding on itself, feeding on you, until you're exhausted. But here's the trap. You think the loop is external. You think it's about the other person, the issue, the injustice, the threat. But it's not. The loop is internal. It's your own reaction creating the conditions for the next reaction. It's your own engagement training the system to engage you harder. It's your own energy feeding the mechanism that extracts more energy. The Gnostic term is Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, a cycle with no beginning and no end, self-sustaining, self-perpetuating, and the Archons don't need to do anything once the loop is active. You do the work yourself. You keep checking, you keep scrolling, you keep engaging, because the loop has trained you to believe that disengagement is loss, that if you don't respond, you're weak. If you don't stay informed, you're ignorant. If you don't defend your position, you're complicit. But the texts say otherwise. The one who refuses the loop breaks the chain. The one who does not react cannot be bound. So let's map this onto your actual life. Right now, today, you wake up, you reach for your phone, hook. You see a notification, a headline, a message, something that makes you pause. Your attention locks. You open it, you read it, you feel something. Amplification, anger, fear, desire, outrage. The emotion rises. It feels urgent. It feels important. It feels like you need to do something. You comment, you share, you click. You scroll to the next thing, loop, and the next thing is already waiting, already calibrated, already designed to hook you again. This isn't hypothetical. This is your morning, your commute, your lunch break, your evening, your last moment before sleep. The three-step cycle is running constantly, and you're feeding it without even knowing. Let's trace it through a single day. 7 a.m., you check your phone. News headline, crisis, scandal, threat. Hook, you feel the spike of concern. Amplification, you read 3 more articles. Loop, 9:30 a.m., notification. Someone replied to your comment from last night. Hook, they disagreed. You feel the irritation, amplification, you respond. Loop, 12:15 p.m., scrolling during lunch. You see a post. Someone living the life you want. Hook, you feel the gap, the lack, amplification. You keep scrolling, comparing. Loop, 3:45 p.m., breaking news alert. Something happened, something urgent. Hook, you feel the need to know, amplification. You click, you read, you share. Loop, 8:00 p.m., social media, a debate, a conflict, someone is wrong. Hook, you feel the need to correct, to defend. Amplification, you engage. Loop, 11:30 p.m., one last scroll before bed, just to check, just to see. Hook, amplification, loop. And the next morning, it starts again. This is the feed cycle. And here's what the texts say about it. The Archons do not need to imprison the body. They imprison the attention. And attention imprisoned is a life consumed. You're not living your day. You're reacting to your day. Every hook pulls you out of presence. Every amplification drains your energy. Every loop trains you to do it again. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, the month, the year, what do you have? Exhaustion, not from living, from feeding. The system has extracted your attention, your emotion, your time, your will, and given you nothing in return. No clarity, no peace, no sovereignty, just the next hook. But tonight, right now, you can interrupt it. Not forever, not perfectly, but once, and once is enough to break the spell. The interrupt protocol. Tonight, before you sleep, you're going to do 3 things. 3 precise actions that break the feed cycle mid-extraction. Not theory, not intention, action. Because the system doesn't care what you know, it only cares what you do. And if you do nothing, if you just understand the cycle but keep feeding it, nothing changes. So here's the protocol. Action 1, recognition. The moment you feel the hook, the moment your attention locks on something and you feel that pull, you stop. Immediately. You don't finish reading. You don't scroll one more post. You don't just check this one thing. You stop and you say, out loud or silently, I see the hook. That's it. 4 words, no analysis, no judgment. No trying to figure out why it hooked you or what it means, just recognition. The Gnostic texts call this gnosis, not knowledge, but direct seeing. The moment you name the mechanism, it loses power. Not all of it, but enough. Because the hook relies on unconsciousness. It requires you to be inside the pull without knowing you're inside. The moment you step back and see it, you're no longer fully captured. You're watching. And the feed cycle can't complete if you're watching instead of reacting. Action 2, breath reset. Once you've recognized the hook, you breathe. Not a deep breath, not a meditation, not a ritual. Just 3 slow breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow, deliberate, conscious. This isn't spiritual. This is physiological. The hook triggers a stress response. Your heart rate spikes. Your focus narrows. Your body prepares to react. That's the amplification starting. And breath, conscious, controlled breath, interrupts the amplification. It signals to your nervous system. There is no threat. There is no urgency. We are not in danger. The emotion doesn't disappear, but it de-escalates. The fire doesn't go out, but it stops growing. The texts say, the soul that breathes remembers itself. The soul that holds its breath forgets. 3 breaths, that's all. And in those 3 breaths, you create space. Space between the hook and your reaction. Space between the emotion and your action. Space between the system's pull and your choice. And in that space, you're free. Action 3, sovereign refusal. Now you choose. Not from emotion, not from compulsion, not from the pull, from will. And here's the choice. You refuse to complete the loop. You don't comment, you don't share, you don't click, you don't scroll to the next thing. You close the app, you put the phone down, you turn off the screen, you walk away. Not forever, not as a rule. Just this once. This is the hardest part. Because the system has trained you to believe that disengagement is loss. That if you don't respond, you're weak. If you don't stay informed, you're ignorant. If you don't engage, you're complicit. But the texts say, the Archons cannot feed on refusal. They cannot harvest what is not given. The soul that withholds becomes sovereign. Sovereign refusal doesn't mean you never engage. It means you engage only when you choose, not when the system pulls. It means you act from stillness, not from turbulence. It means you break the loop once, so you remember you can break it again. Tonight's practice. Before you sleep, you will encounter a hook. Guaranteed. A notification, a thought, a message, a post. Something will pull, and when it does, you follow the protocol, recognition. I see the hook. Breath reset. 3 slow breaths, sovereign refusal. Close the app. Put the phone down. Walk away. That's it. 1 interrupt. 1 conscious break in the cycle. And tomorrow, you'll feel the difference. What happens when you stop feeding? The first thing you'll notice is resistance, not from the system, from you. You'll feel the pull, the urge to check, the need to know, the compulsion to engage. It will feel urgent. It will feel like you're missing something, like something important is happening and you're not part of it. That's not you. That's the training. The system has conditioned you, for years, maybe decades, to believe that disengagement is dangerous, that silence is ignorance, that stillness is weakness. But the texts say, the soul that can endure its own silence cannot be controlled. The first 24 hours are the hardest. You'll reach for your phone without thinking. You'll open apps by reflex. You'll feel the phantom buzz of notifications that aren't there. This is withdrawal, not metaphorical, actual withdrawal. Your brain has been trained to expect the dopamine hit, the emotional spike, the constant stimulation. And when you withhold it, when you refuse to feed the cycle, your brain protests. It creates urgency. It creates anxiety. It creates the feeling that something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. You're just interrupting the feed. By 48 hours, something shifts. The urgency fades. The compulsion weakens. You start to notice something you haven't felt in years. Space, mental space, emotional space, time that isn't consumed by reaction. You'll have thoughts that aren't triggered by external input. You'll feel emotions that aren't amplified by the system. You'll make choices that aren't responses to hooks. And by 72 hours, 3 days of conscious interruption, you'll notice something else. The world didn't end. The crisis you thought you needed to track, still happening, but it didn't need your attention. The argument you thought you needed to win, still going, but it didn't need your energy. The information you thought you needed to know, still out there, but it didn't change your life. The system kept running, the feed kept cycling, but you weren't feeding it, and nothing collapsed. The text described this moment as the first silence. When the soul withdraws its energy, the Archons grow hungry, but they do not pursue. They simply wait for the soul to return. And here's the trap. You will want to return, not because you need to, but because the silence feels strange, uncomfortable, almost threatening. You've spent so long in turbulence that stillness feels like absence, but it's not absence, it's presence. The Gnostic term is hesychia, sacred stillness, not emptiness, not void, but fullness without noise. This is what the system fears. Not your anger, not your resistance, not your awareness, your silence. Because a silent human doesn't generate energy, a still mind doesn't create turbulence, a sovereign will doesn't feed the cycle, and a system that runs on extraction, on constant emotional output, on endless reaction, on perpetual engagement, cannot function without participants. So when you stop feeding, you're not just freeing yourself. You're starving the mechanism, not destroying it, not fighting it, just withdrawing your fuel. And the longer you stay silent, the longer you practice the interrupt, the more you'll notice you don't need the feed. You never did. You were never supposed to see this. That's the final piece, the one the system can't account for. The Archons, the feed cycle, the three-step extraction, all of it was designed to run invisibly. It was designed to capture everyone, to keep them hooked, amplified, looped, without them ever knowing. But you're reading this. You're here. You've seen the mechanism, and that changes everything. The texts say, in every generation there are souls who do not sleep. They are not chosen. They are not special. They simply see. See what? That the game is optional, that the hook only works if you bite, that the amplification only happens if you allow it, that the loop only continues if you complete it. You were always free to refuse. You just didn't know, and now you do. So here's what happens next. You'll go back into the world, back into the feed, back into the noise, and the hooks will still come. The amplifications will still trigger. The loops will still pull, but you'll see them. You'll see the notification and recognize the hook. You'll feel the emotion rise and recognize the amplification. You'll feel the urge to react and recognize the loop. And in that moment of recognition, in that split second of seeing, you'll have a choice. Feed the cycle or interrupt it, react or watch, engage or refuse. And every time you choose refusal, every time you choose silence over reaction, stillness over turbulence, sovereignty over compulsion, you become less feedable. The system doesn't give up. It keeps trying. It keeps offering hooks, but they don't land the same way. They don't grip as hard. They don't pull as deep, because you've seen the pattern. You've mapped the mechanism. You've interrupted the cycle. And once you've done it once, you can do it again. The Gnostic term for this state is pneumatikos, the one who breathes, not enlightened, not transcendent, just awake. Awake enough to see the redirect, calm enough to refuse it, sovereign enough to choose differently. And here's what the texts promise. The soul that refuses to feed becomes invisible to the Archons, not hidden, not protected, simply uninteresting. Because a calm human doesn't generate energy. A silent mind doesn't create turbulence. A sovereign will doesn't power the system. And a system built on extraction, on constant output, on endless reaction, on perpetual engagement, has no use for someone who won't participate. So you don't fight it. You don't resist it. You don't try to destroy it or expose it or save anyone from it. You just stop feeding it, one interrupt at a time, one breath at a time, one sovereign refusal at a time, and over days, weeks, months, you'll notice something. You're free, not perfectly, not permanently, but functionally. Free enough to think your own thoughts, feel your own emotions, make your own choices. Free enough to live outside the cycle. Tonight, before you sleep, practice the protocol. Recognition. See the hook. Breath reset. 3 slow breaths. Sovereign refusal. Close the app. Walk away just once. That's all it takes to remember. You were never the target. You were always the one who could see.